Hi, this is DarkFox127 and welcome to another Skyrim Creation Kit tutorial video. Today we're going to be working with magic effects, but I'm not going to go all the way into details of spells and learning them or enchantments. What I'm going to do is go through magic effects, and then in future videos I will explain how to apply them to spells or enchantments or in other ways like perks. So today we're just going to have a sort of overview of the details of magic effects. So we're going to go under magic and magic effect, alternate click and new, and I'm going to start by explaining what a magic effect is. A magic effect governs the visuals and the functional sort of effects that go on with things like spells, enchantments, perks, everything. So when you want a spell and you want to have it say a green effect and you want it to do something when it hits a target, or you want to script an event, that's what the magic effect is. It governs all of that, as you can see here. So the first thing is the ID. With everything you want to give it a unique ID, so I could call it DF127 magic effect. Not very inventive, but you know. And I could call this a teleport spell if I wanted to do that. Not going to do that now. The most important thing is the effect archetype. If you are making a scripted magic effect, then it is definitely going to have to be under script. Nothing else, otherwise the papyrus script down here wouldn't work. And just to mention that now, the first thing you'll notice is that the papyrus scripts, the box isn't there, can't be accessed. The best thing to do with magic effects when you create a new one or even edit an existing is to first of all just give it an ID and confirm it, and then reopen it. Especially with scripts, not only now can you access the menu, but sometimes if you're working with an existing effect and you're changing things around, then you'll add a script to it, confirm it, give it a new ID, go back in, and you'd notice that the script has been knocked off. So always just make a new version, confirm it, and then go back in. Now the casting type is pretty important too. Obviously this is going to govern the way in which the spell works, well, the effect, sorry. And you've got three sort of options here. The first is concentration. This is when it requires a button to be constantly held down, and the longer you hold it down the more it continues to go on. So maybe if it was like the healing spell, the effect would need to be concentration if you want it to continue to heal as long as you've got it active. The constant effect is something that is always happening as long as the magic effect is applied to whatever it might be. It could be an actor, so the actor could have a perk on them. This magic effect could be a perk that boosts an attribute, so that could be a constant effect on the player. This could be something for an enchantment, so say you've got a ring, would have to have a constant effect on it. As long as you wear the ring, something happens. And the other one is very common, the most used casting type I suppose, is the fire and forget, which is something that is just fired off as soon as you release the button. Oh, press the wrong button there. It's just, oh dear me, let's try it again. There we go. Anyway, as I was saying, so when you hit that button, release the spell, it just fires straight off. And then you've got the delivery here. I think I just sort of missed out a little on effect archetypes. As you can see with these, there's sort of all sorts of things you can do, sort of absorbing, cloak, cure addiction, cure disease, and then that governs what sort of becomes accessible down here. So let's put this on something simple. Just say absorb. But yeah, we'll carry on down. Delivery is how it's delivered, obviously. I mean, as you can see, self, this would mean that it happens to whoever's casting it. So if the player activates this, it activates on the player. If an enemy activates this, sort of uses this effect, happens on them. Then we've got contact. This is if, say, it's a fired projectile or something, and as soon as it hits whatever it hits, whether it be the floor and spawns something, whether it be an actor, and as soon as it contacts them, does something to them, whatever the effect might be. So it could be for an enchantment, it could be a sword enchantment. So on contact, when the sword hits them, it does something to them. Then we've got aimed. Aimed is, this is definitely a projectile sort of magic effect, so it would fire a projectile which you'd set down here mostly, and it's wherever the crosshair is aiming is where your magic effect is going to be fired at. Target actor, it's always going to target what actor is either pointed at by your crosshair or nearer to your crosshair. And target location is just more general, so that's wherever you're really looking at. It doesn't have to be an actor or anything, it could be the floor, and it will target the effect there. So I'm going to keep this on self, that's a commonly used one. A magic skill, this is obviously the skill that it is. This is also what will show up in the menu, so you'll see what type of spell it is. It will sort of govern where it goes in the user interface. So if it's going to be an alteration spell, we want it to go under alteration, so you don't want to make a conjuration spell and have it under destruction or something like that. A minimum skill level, this is more aimed at NPCs, so NPCs know what level they have to be, so this could be set to an NPC, but say if it's a follower and a follower who is leveled with the player, but you don't want them using a high-end spell that you create, and you don't want them using it at the very start of the game, then you could set this and say that they have to be at least level 25 before they can use it. So they will have the ability, but only when they hit the right level, so they're not going to be casting Dramoras when they're level 3 or something. Association types, because I've selected, say, Archetype Absorb, this is the attribute, the value, if you will, active value that's going to be linked with it. So it would be, say, Absorb Health. If this was maybe to conjure a creature or command something, then what would be selected under there is that specific creature, and the selection will change according to the archetype that you select. So I think we might have Summon or Conjurable down here. Summon creature, you see that it's a list of actors now. Let's just keep this to Absorb for the minute. Resist value, this is when you fire this effect at something, or it gets applied to whatever it might be. It could be an actor, and you basically you don't want certain things like Dwemer having their health absorbed, so the resistance could be no, that's wrong, sorry. Okay, resist value, say resist fire. If this was a fire spell, anything that is able to resist fire needs to be able to resist this, so set it as resist fire, if that makes sense. So if this was to maybe do shock damage, you want something that is resistant to shock to be able to resist this. It's allowing it to understand what type of spell it is, and to make sure that certain things don't take the damage if they've got that resistance value. Perk to apply, let's just take that off for now. Perk to apply, this is if you want this magic effect to give the target a perk for the duration of the effect. So if this is lasting 10 seconds, then you want to give them a perk which damages an attribute maybe. You can add it in here, and here's a list of perks. Perks is something I'll have to cover in another video. And then you've got all this tapper duration, tapper weight, tapper curve. This is all sort of the very specifics of how the spell works, how long certain parts of the effect continue. I'm going to leave a link in the description to the Creation Kit wiki, which does a really good job of explaining each of these options. Flags are pretty interesting and quite important. Hostile is if this is going to be a dangerous spell, something that's going to be made to cause damage. It's going to make actors react really hostile. If it's something that's going to harm someone, it's going to want to be ticked hostile, so that if it hits an actor and hostile is ticked under the flags, the actor knows this is a bad thing and they know to retaliate. Detrimental, say if this is absorb health, we want it detrimental, so we want to be taking health away. You could also untick that, and I believe it would switch it the other way and it would be giving health more. It's a bit weird how it works. It's basically a way to say this is a negative sort of thing, so whatever the value is, it needs to be a negative thing. Recover, this is whatever it might apply to the target. If you tick recover, it means that whatever values are changed on the target, whether it changes their attribute when it hits them, say it drains their stamina, then make sure that they're able to recover from that after the effect has finished. That's what recovers for. FX persist, this means that any special effects that you have, so maybe if you're casting something on yourself and you've got a magic effect and the effect lasts for 60 seconds, this is to say I want the effects to stay on for the whole 60 seconds to make it obvious that this effect is on myself. No recast is basically saying that you can't keep hitting the target with this spell over and over and it keep reapplying it. It's only going to apply it once. So say if you've paralysed something and they're on the floor and you hit it again, it's not going to keep adding it and adding to it and adding to it. No hit effect, basically there's no effects play on the target when the spell hits them. No death dispel, even if the item dies, this would mean that if you tick this, the effects still continue. So if they get a blue glow around them when they're hit, say if they die instantly on impact, you can tell it to keep that glow going, whereas if that's unticked, the glow will probably just disappear. And what else have we got? We've got no duration. This is basically saying we don't want to set a duration when we go to add it to a spell, so if this is something that just fires off and it doesn't continue on for a certain amount of time, have no duration. If you need this to take or remain happening for so long, if this is a restore spell that restores your health by 20 points for 10 seconds, then you're going to want to be able to ask and select your duration. No hit event, nothing happens when it hits the target, I think that is, I'm not entirely sure on that one. No magnitude. Don't set a magnitude. This could be if it was a script, and the script is going to govern most of the things. So if it was a teleport spell, we don't want a magnitude for it, we don't need it. But if it's something where we have to say how many points of damage we're doing to something, we're going to want a magnitude. No area. This is obviously saying that only the target gets hit, so don't have it spread across the whole area, or if you don't need to specify an area specifically, tick no area. Painless. This is, say, again, if it was a teleportation spell maybe, it's not going to hurt anyone, so it's not going to hurt the player. This will stop the sort of sound of the player going ah or whatever, like the player's going to know, or the target's going to know that it's not harmful, so they're not going to make any sort of sounds to say ow, I've been hit. Gory visuals isn't used, and hide in user interface, this just means that when you go into your active effects, it's not going to show there if you tick that box. Dispel effects with these keywords, it's basically saying anything with the keywords that you place in here. So if you say like Archetype drow or something, it's going to dispel the effects on a drow automatically, as I understand. Counter effects, not sure what that is. I think these are new, don't think I've seen that before. But target conditions, conditions I'll probably have to cover in another video at some point. Conditions are really detailed, they're used in everything. It's just saying don't do this if this is happening. Maybe say like get that the player is a certain level to allow this to activate, so you could say get player is level and specify a value. It's just saying like these conditions have to be met for this magic effect to take place. Then you get into all the sort of really fun stuff. You get the menu display object. This is what's going to be shown up in the menu, so when you go into your magic effects in the user interface, and you usually get like a pretty image, maybe a blue glow or something to say this is an alteration spell. It's what you get in there. If you type in MAG, you get to the sort of nice pretty effects that you get in the menu. You can select which one you want, so if we had alteration there. I'm just going to skip visual effects and sounds for the minute. The magic item description, if you go into some other magic effects, you'll see that they also have descriptions where they can use sort of things like this. That is going to get the duration that you set in the spell or enchantment, whatever you've set it to. Whatever duration you type in, it's going to fill into the magic description here. So if you say absorbs, let's say 10 points of, oh, can't type today. Absorbs 10 points of health from the target, and you could say 4, but the duration might change depending on what the spell using this effect is. So you would say, that's basically saying get the duration that's been typed in on the actual spell that this is being applied to. So it might say that it's going to cost so much magicka, and you would put something like MAG. That would maybe be the points actually, so say absorb MAG. So get however many magic points have been set in the spell of health from the target for, and then whatever duration is typed in. Now if you're only, that's useful if you're going to use this magic effect for different spells, so you're going to have different levels of it, but you're going to use this same effect on different spells. So if you want a low level version and a high level version, the low level version is not going to say absorbs 10 points of health and then the high level version say the same. It's going to be whatever magnitude you set to the spell. It means that you don't have to make another version of this magic effect just to change the description of it. Hopefully that makes sense. Papyrus script. My scripting tutorial series is going to cover sort of using scripts to do effects to spells. I'll do a teleportation sort of a scripting tutorial in my scripting series, which will explain how to do on effect starts and stuff like that, so I'm not going to cover that, but that's where you put your scripts. We've got things like dual casting. It's basically scaling the dual casting, how much more powerful it's going to be if you're dual casting the effect, so say if it's a spell. Spell making, magnitude and duration, I'm not entirely sure what these are, but again the Creation Kit wiki will get into detail with these sort of nitty gritty things. It's to do with the scripts and things like that. Equipability, it can be an effect that happens whenever this magic effect is applied to whatever it might be, the target, the player. So this could be some nice visuals around the player as long as this is sort of happening. So say if this was an enchantment of a ring, the equipped ability could be some sort of swarm of bats or something around the player, whatever the effect might be. It's basically saying when the ring is on the player, when this effect is active, this is going to be placed on the player, and then when the magic effect isn't active, this should disappear off them. Now as for visual effects and sounds, it's pretty self-explanatory with the sound. It's just draw. It's a sound that you get when you draw the spell out, and then the charge as it's charging, ready when it's sort of locked into place, ready to be fired, and then the release sound. It's all pretty obvious, self-explanatory. The casting sound level, just how loud the volume's going to be, and the visual effects is pretty self-explanatory as well. Casting art, casting light, so any light emitting off the spell when the player's casting it. The casting art is obviously usually to do with the hand, the colour of the spell in the hand. The hit effect, the special effect that happens when it hits the target. The hit shader, so if there's any shader go around the target, staying on the body for the duration of the effect, and that would again link with FX persist, whether it stays on them. Enchantment art and Enchantments Shadow is usually to do with enchantments, so if this is placed on a sword, the sort of glow that you get on the sword. The projectile is the projectile that you see fired. So if it's an ice spike, it'd be an ice spike projectile. And a good thing to do with these things is just type in the type of spell it is usually, or alteration, or MAG alteration, and you usually see sort of the standards here. So as you can see here, alteration, Recast. The names give away some of what the effects look like, and you can always find them down here in these menus to get a sort of preview of them anyway. The impact data set, this is sort of the visuals that you should get when it hits the target. The explosion, what happens, you can create your very own explosions here. This can be applied to things like my enchanted arrows that I did, the explosions that take place with the effect. So special effect, explosions, you can apply certain big explosions to it, and the explosions themselves might have effects with damage on them. Image space mod, I can't entirely remember. There's an awful lot to remember with magic effects, but again, Creation Kit wiki will explain certain nitty gritty details about all of these, but that's generally most of what there is to know about magic effects, and you can do some amazing things. Just spend some time with it. One thing to say is when you've made a magic effect, say if you add it to a spell or an enchantment, and you've been going in and out of game testing and testing, always use a fresh save, something that hasn't been saved with the sort of previous attempt. So say if you go in game and you try and test this, and then you save after it, and then you load that back up after making a change, the game tends to remember values of, say, the magic effect or the spell or whatever's changed from the previous attempt. And even sometimes a fresh restore of your machine, when you think, not reinstall, Jesus, a restart of your entire machine can help if you're not seeing the effects change or take place. The game just tends to remember things, and it needs a good fresh restart when you've got things right. So it can be a lot of trial and error with magic effects, but you'll get there in the end. So my next video linked with Sword of Magic is going to cover actually creating a small magic effect ourselves. It's going to be applying it to a spell, and we'll go through the small spell menu and how to sort of make our own spells really, and then add them to books so that we can learn them. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. Few patchy areas here and there. It's really looks quite confusing in detail, but it's really quite simple when you get used to it. Like I say, trial and error, try things out, see what you can do with it. And scripting, of course, opens up a lot of windows, so check out my scripting tutorial series. And that is about it for this video, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you next time.